You might be at that stage where you're trying to incorporate groove and melody together all at the same time, but it still kind of sounds a little bit dislocated and a little bit off. I'm going to demonstrate some of the reasons why that might be, and then I'll show you how you can fix those problems. So you've got a nice groove, something like this maybe, and then the melody comes at the end of every phrase, right? It's almost there. It's starting to integrate, but it still feels very groove, then melody, then groove, then melody. Another reason it might sound a little bit off is that you've heard the tip, use the ghost notes to fill in the space, but you're filling in all of the space. Here we've got no concept of beat division and how we can use space to make melodies more interesting. Another reason might be that you only have things happening at the beginning of the phrase. Which is still cool, but how do you branch out from there? Alright, so the first thing that we need to learn in order to be able to incorporate groove and melody is hand independence, is autopilot technique. The basics of it is that you have one hand that maintains one pattern while the other hand is free to roam. So what we want to be able to do is play these grooves as we've been playing them like this, but be able to do it with one hand. Right? Now I'm not suggesting that you do this all the time, but I am suggesting that you do this for moments so that you can roam. So now you can see I'm starting to play melody at the same time as the groove, but there's still something missing. It still sounds a little bit all over the place. Now another way that we can bring those two together is to split our brain in two and think, all right, what's the groove going to be? What's the melody going to be? And not to rely on both of these elements together, but to think about them individually first. So say I have a melody in my head, or I figure out a melody on the pan. Something simple like this, I can think, all right, I want this melody, but I want to groove underneath it at the same time. How is that going to work ergonomically? So if my groove is this, right? Well, if I've got one hand on the groove, my other hand can play that. And then we have it. So here, I'm demonstrating now how you can use both this autopilot technique, where you've just got one hand doing one thing and one hand doing the simple melody, but then start to integrate that so that you then have moments of this hand-to-hand kind of ghost note pattern happening as well. So then you can start to bring more interest into the groove itself, and you can drift in and out of that. And then as well, when you've got this hand-to-hand thing going, that gives you space to do more of this kind of stuff that you might have been doing in a previous example, but too much. And you can just kind of pepper it in here and there, right? I'm starting to bring in my left hand to bring some more interesting moments within that groove. I'm also, as I'm improvising around with that, stretching out the melody, right? I've got the main idea. Change it a little bit, right? so I can have the main framework, the main structure of that melody, but just start to throw in some little interesting moments. And that's the kind of thing that will start to become more natural the more you improvise with it and the more you give yourself space to play around. That won't come straight away. But yeah, I invite you to always be thinking about when you've got a groove, you've got a melody, how can you bring those together? At what point between, okay, this note comes in right before the tack here, right? You have to kind of break it apart and think, where does that hand play in relation to this hand, right? And once you've really got the hang of that, then you can start to incorporate other elements in and yeah, play around with all of these different themes and ideas so that you've got an interesting, constantly moving piece. So I'm going to demonstrate using this format that we've just come up with and then reintroducing some of the bad examples that I gave at the beginning of the video, but showing you how actually in the context of other things they're perfectly fine, they work really well. It's just that when we get stuck in them, it's not interesting anymore, it's not fun. So let me show you what that might look like. Because we filled the space before this, it's nice to have that break. Right? You see how I'm then incorporated a bit of that melody with the chord progression that I just laid the foundation for. And then I was throwing in some little versions of having the groove and then a bit of melody at the end of the phrase, right? So all of these things have a place. It's just how you use them and how often you use them. So I invite you to find a groove that you like, that you can play with one hand, right? If you're not quite there yet, check out my autopilot video and study that first. But find a groove, and then come up with a little melody. The way that I often come up with melodies is just by moving in shapes. I don't have to actually think about the sound. You don't have to create something amazing. Just think about what shape you're moving in and stick to it, commit to it. See how you can combine those things, and that'll take you a long time if you're not there already. That took me hours and hours and days and weeks the first time I started playing around with this idea. And then incorporate different versions of playing the groove. Right? And then put all those parts together and all of a sudden you've got a composition. So have fun with that one, and if you want to explore this idea more, check out this video next. But yeah, I'll see you in the next one, and I wish you a wonderful week.